So I'm going to give you a perspective, so I've written this out. It's about models. So groundwater models and the underlying assumptions about recharge and groundwater flow are central to springs management. Despite their important role, there's substantial model errors and/or their misuse goes unreported, which is doubly important because when evaluated openly, the errors and misuse favor a lower than demonstrable or even reasonable estimation of impacts to spring flows. One example is the groundwater modeling that was at the center of two permits issued by St. John's River Water Management District to Adena Springs Ranch. One was for the consumptive use of groundwater and the other was for the use of environmental resources. Regarding the ERP, the Environmental Resource Permit, a pivotal assertion was that a layer of clay near the land surface across the property would prohibit infiltration and recharge, and therefore protect water quality in the Ocala River, its tributary Mill Creek, and the Florida aquifer from the nutrient-laden water that will be produced by the Adena operation. Immediately following those testimonies, a different set of experts presented the results of groundwater modeling in support of the consumptive use permit. Their modeling demonstrated that the proposed groundwater pumping would have no significant effect on spring flows. Buried within that modeling work were two key assumptions. One, that more than 80% of the proposed groundwater withdrawal would return to the aquifer and therefore go unused by the crops for which the water was intended. And two, that the returned water plus rainfall will recharge the superficial aquifer at a rate higher than estimated for any other region of Florida, and therefore mitigate the impacts of pumping on lake levels, spring flows that are subject to MFLs. Okay, so from our perspective, the fact that the district simultaneously agreed with two so vastly different assignments of recharge, 0 versus 35 inches a year, and that the discrepancy was identified only after substantial external review, demonstrates that in this case the modeling was certainly less than an objective form of analysis. It may be true that recharge on the Adena property is either 0 or incredibly high, but it cannot be true that it is simultaneously both, depending on which form of impact is being assessed. In another example, a groundwater model was used by the Suwannee River Water Management District to demonstrate that the proposed groundwater pumping immediately adjacent to Ginny Springs on the Santa Fe River would have no impact on spring flows. No meaningful support for the reliability of the model was provided, nor was there any quality assurance documentation available for review. After a lengthy and expensive independent review commissioned by the owner of Ginny Springs, it became clear that the model was in no way capable of simulating impacts to springs or rivers associated with the progressive expansion of small-scale groundwater pumping. Instead, we found that it couldn't even come close to simulating the very well-documented drawdown in the Florida aquifer caused by Gainesville's municipal groundwater pumping. A third and likely most consequential example that I focus on stems from model delineated seepage versus spring discharges. Across the state for several years, groundwater models have consistently shown substantial seepage discharge from the Florida aquifer into the Gulf of Mexico relative to the simulated discharge from springs. Unlike spring discharge, which is measured in aggregate at stream gauges, seepage is not verifiable from data, and moreover, continued seepage discharge when coastal springs have all but ceased to flow isn't plausible. The models I've reviewed reveal that a large percentage of the simulated groundwater flow to wells, 50 or more percent, comes at the expense of this unverifiable and implausible coastal seepage. By itself, supplying simulated pumping from model boundaries is a fatal design flaw for which model developers are taught to prevent. More pertinent, though, simulated impacts to coastal seepage precludes the simulation of impacts to springs and underlies the assertion that pumping has little, if any, appreciable impact on spring flows. So from my perspective, the technical situation is bad, but the policy implications are really ugly. Models should provide transparent and objective tools for understanding how our aquifer system works, and therefore what types of actions to avoid and what types to pursue, and the efforts to equitably balance demands on the aquifer with the preservation of some level of natural flows and the ecological health that those flows sustain. Instead, in their present condition, they support, in my opinion, a state of denial. Denial of our role in the demise of springs, denial of the degree to which we're depleting the aquifer, and denial of the futility of the professed efforts to arrest those declines, through, in particular, the designation of minimum flows and levels. For despite the best intent, they're very good and best intentions, the magnitude of the MFL designations is essentially meaningless if the underlying mechanism for triggering the action, for triggering restorative action, falls to flawed groundwater models. I do see a good that can sprout from these fields. Productive paths forward would be a better descriptor, but only if we move forward with an eyes open recognition of the flaws. One path forward would be to build better models, and hopefully we'll see better models come out, which we've proven is possible and is my personal preference. But a second productive path forward, which may be a better one, would be to remove models from the process altogether, to simply set enforceable thresholds triggered by straightforward measurements. For instance, mandatory recovery plans that become implemented immediately after measured flows, not statistically manipulated values, remain below the determined threshold value for the specified period of time. Neither path will be easy. Both require socio-political rather than technical advancements. But I came here today to implore you, all of you, to resolve yourselves to one of those two paths, because otherwise status quo isn't going to do much for us.